People want to stand up and stretch your shoes, not leave your seat and stretch your shoes, move on. Okay.
Is that okay? Is that okay?
So our next reader is Cecelia Hagen. So Cecelia, I'm sure many people here know her poetry. Cecilia's poetry is always a delight. And for me, I think that she really speaks to a lot of women's experiences. Like she speaks about being a mother, a lover, a child. There's some way that she captures, like when I read Cecilia's poems, I know a woman wrote them. And I told her that once and she was like, huh? But I do feel that she's really able to capture something really essential about women's experiences, and I appreciate that. The other thing I really love about Cecilia's work is that in one line she can be breaking your heart. You know, she just, and the next line that sly humor comes in, and you know, she's got you. So she's able to really hold in one poem heartbreaking kinds of metaphors and images and humor. It's a great gift, I think, to be able to do that. Her 3 books are Fringe Living, among others, and most recently Entering, which was published by Airlie in 2011. This is what she said about her work. My relationship to poetry, where would I be without it? It's such a secretive kind of relationship, really. All the reading and thinking, the wool gathering I do, that's become part of my nature. When I teach poetry, I like to expound its virtues. Here's her humor. It's terrifically low impact environmentally, and it's also terrifically low cost. It connects us to others, crosses borders and boundaries, has the power to enlarge the heart and spirit. My first poem was published in Highlights for Children when I was 7. My 2nd grade teacher sent in a batch of them, then called me up and told me my poem would be in the magazine. I don't think I ever saw a copy of the issue with my poem in it, but the teacher, Mrs. Sampson, referred to me as a poet for the rest of the year. Either she was prescient, or I liked the way her prediction sounded enough to pursue it until poetry became an unshakable habit. Cecelia Hagen.
Thank you. I want to thank you all for coming. Thanks, Scott, the Lord of the Books. My water's just going to slide right there. Yeah, Mrs. Sampson, I had her in 2nd grade, and I also had her in 4th grade, which I considered great. And then I became class president, and looking back, I think she actually counted the votes and just decided to appoint me because it wasn't that popular. But it was, you know, what power. I wanted to start with this this poem, After Buñuel. You know Buñuel, the filmmaker. And I forget which poem it is. Maybe The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, where a woman, they're all sort of stuck in a room and she opens her purse. It's just a little thing, but she pulls out a chicken foot. Yeah. Stayed with me. After Buñuel, I left my ruby-crested flycatcher in my other purse, but here is the consolation prize, a chicken toe in my cell phone, stuck into the tiny buttons as if to indicate where the gizzard might dial up the waddle. Heavy as a Townsend's warbler while migrating, this migraine of half-seen truths and half-heard limericks, ravens I can't count, cardinals I can't see but remember. The mummified hummingbird of you was so beautiful, the desert defeated you completely. When the red-winged blackbird takes off, it's gone. I got all my birds into one poem. So we have a new pope, which is really exciting. I didn't know the old Pope's name until he retired. But the new Pope, you know, I mean, I tango, my husband and I tango, and there's a lot of wardrobe adjustment. Sorry, that's bothering me. The tango community, it's like, oh, he's from Buenos Aires, he was born in 1934, that was during the golden age, do you suppose he tangos? And I heard that in Italy there's a cartoon of him in our newspaper, editorial cartoon, tangoing with a cardinal. We all love it, and I heard Sister Prejean earlier this afternoon, who was wonderful, and she was talking about, you know, the Curia, the sort of the high enclave, and how Pope Francis just slipped through because they were all thinking about the Italian cardinals and who would jockey for power and stuff, and he just kind of took advantage. And that he doesn't even have any Roman numerals behind his name. It's like a whole new Francis, who's one of everybody's favorite saints. I speak with authority. So I have this poem about my 12 years of Catholic school. A few of them, but this one is called The Holy Water. Filling the holy water. John, chip-toothed, long-haired, flirted with Sister Sylvia by offering to fill her holy water fount. The half-moon bowls were nailed to the doorpost of every classroom. Entering, we would dip our fingers into them and bless ourselves, gaining time off from our time in purgatory, decreasing the certain punishment for our lengthening list of sins. John and my brother were fatherless, renegade boys who subscribed to nothing wholesome. They lit fires in pie pans when no one was home, defaced comic books, made up a religion based on bozo. So John, his blonde bangs falling into his eyes, replenished Sister Sylvia's holy water, much to her delight and the improvement of his biology grade. Though she had no scientific way of determining whether he used the priest-blessed sacristy water or simply filled the font at the drinking fountain, just down the locker-lined hall, at the white basin with wads of gum pressed against his porcelain lip and a rusty stain seeping out from where the unholy water repeatedly touched the place everyone bent to, so empty of thought, so beautifully, whenever they were thirsty. High school. A few more I wanted to read from this, and the reason I would love to donate this to Scott, to Tsunami, but it's a collective early press, and we're having our open manuscript period now, so if you have a book of poems sort of coalescing, March, April, May, Early is accepting submissions, and no cost to submit, no cost to get your book published if you're chosen, you just have to work for 3 years. But it's really a joy to do, so a little plug for that, and because it's a collective, it's not, all money goes back to the press. This poem, Imaginary Sand, is about when my daughter was in Africa, Ghana. She did a semester abroad. And it was hard enough that she was away at college, but then she went so far away and there were really kind of no phones or anything. Imaginary sand, a new word, harmattan, a wind blowing red sand that collects daily on my daughter's feet, her hair, her ears. A wind that travels everywhere sub-Saharan while I cupids and foil-wrapped hearts in the gim-crack drugstore, wondering what time zone it is where she is, wondering what good is a good enjambment at filling an emptiness sand filters into and out of. Imaginary sand. She would breathe her sweet and reckless breaths all night while I held her as an hourglass holds what runs through it. And this one I collect the small, thick particles. It's about a fight I had with my sister-in-law. I stood uphill, then down, standing down, taking the pill to get through it, or missing the taking, my stance wide and precarious, my heart rummaging for a closer hold. There was no neighborhood, no waving. I punched out eyes with a flathead screwdriver. I undressed the naked branches and pushed stars into crevices. Myself, I kept distant. I knew the smell of octane, the pressure of rain, and the way home, though I chose not to take it. A courage, a stubborn array of echoes. Too big for arrows, too far away for bombs. Little soldiers, I said, and my fingers curled tighter. So I wanted to read a few clown poems from this book that Trap Rock Press did. And this is a Tsunami donation because I bought out Eric, bought out Trap Rock. And the clown is just a character that kind of came to me auspiciously, I guess. But it doesn't happen like that very often. But I wrote about 24-pound poems in 2.5 days. They just go like boom, boom, boom. They're short. I'll just read a few. Clown's night off. Clown sits on her porch, admiring the red-faced geraniums. Shade and sun make nameless shapes, and breeze strokes the wind chimes, fans her hair. There will be no audience tonight, no moon-faced children tossing popcorn stars between their teeth, no crowding with her kin into the tiny car. A night off requires its own kind of preparation, a day of considerable rest, a twilight of pacing, then dark hours of shoving scarves and streamers into springs of tight surprise. There are lots of clown poems in here, not all 24 of them, just I think 7 or something, but she has a fear of flying, which I don't have, so she's not really all like me. She adopted an orangutan. I would never do that. I'm fascinated by that. Clown's dowry. Clown was born in America. So were her parents, grandparents, so on. Each generation scratched the surface with a bent spoon, then moved to a different state. In this way they achieved very little. When you work in the melting pot, you get rendered. Clown's gold star. Clown got a gold star in her youth, so in her mind it never tarnished. But sometimes she feels its sharp points deep inside her, the gold juice of it leaking out. Clown at the end. Grizzled, chewing gristle, Clown had found a patch of sun. Not easy to do at the end of the year at her latitude, everything teetering. She balanced there, ruminating, the air blue, her thoughts not. Trees stood closer, the tires of passing cars made interesting comments about the things of this world. A friend gave me a jar of honey a few months ago. If you ever want to make me happy, just give me some honey like that. I've never had such good honey. I know, and I buy what I think is good honey, but not homemade honey, I guess. The honey is turning to sugar as if to replicate the roughness of my tongue, or maybe the furry bodies of the bees it no longer hears coming. Light fills the liquid, a transforming sensation, to be shot through with light, to be gold inside and out, like being in love before love has been made or even spoken about. This honey was churned in the humming stomachs of bees, was hived, sealed in, then spun from the comb, and now mingles with an apple in my mouth, as it did in Sappho's one sunlit afternoon thousands of autumns ago, when she, exiled, lacking her customary luxuries, turned to the consolation of this sweetness. This poem, I take some lines from that famous poem by James Wright, A Blessing. So I hate air quotes, but I'll try to make some little gesture when I am quoting James Wright, but it's I'm kind of arguing with the poem because, well, so it's called Late August in the Weimar parking lot. Carrying crisp bags of school supplies, we walked by the parked work trailer piled high with chopped grass and past ripe pears whose smells mingle with those of the gas can and rusty blades baking in the sun. Opening my car doors, we get in, front and back, adult and child, breathing the sweet scent of rot and ruin. Now the key does its business with the ignition under my unconscious hand. Now I'm about to learn to let go again. I'm about to marvel again at a girl aging a few months every night. Some would say, break into blossom, this stage, this changing, And though I remember those words as if they were tattooed somewhere inside me, I would not call it that. I would say time is switching slides in its projector more and more rapidly, while I, helplessly competent at coming gladly out of the willows, look over my shoulder to watch the tools and debris stand still as we back past the trailer. I shift the stick forward to wheel us smoothly into the future, where youth is yearning to be, where I know full well there is no loneliness like theirs. Sometimes I get so mad when I read those poems. They're beautiful, but they lull you into, if you look at what is it saying. I'll lighten up now. Running for their lives. Last night the bats were practicing their averages. They used the stars to count like a slow swirling abacus. You hesitated to move your moon shadow off the gravel. The president was speaking to the nation while the fields exhaled into the air. If the bugs were running for their lives, they made no sound while doing so, but your shadow moaned a little, where it felt the beetles' needle feet when the driveway rattled its granite bones. I didn't grow up in the Northwest. I grew up in the Southeast. And we didn't have fish hatcheries there. Well, we had a lot of fish. But, I'd heard about going to fish hatcheries, but it's really charming. I didn't think, what's the thrill? All these concrete pens, but, it's probably the fact of those concrete pens. So this is when I went to a fish hatchery by myself one time at the North Nehalem Fish Hatchery. I stood alone between the troughs, stirring a kind of fire when I tossed food pellets into the water, making the fingerlings lunge in one direction, then spark apart as the pellets sank. A little rain arrived. Fir trees ringed the parking lot, extending a darker solace. The caretaker came out of his trailer and climbed a ladder to work on some kind of wire. "Nice rain," he said, his voice coming through the thin rain falling everywhere, piercing everything. A kingfisher zipped between us, then veered off toward the nearby creek. The fish paddled in the concrete pens, maybe worried, maybe happy, maybe gauging the shadows cast down by the wavering trees. I'm just going to read two more. Susan Wheeler, she was nominated for the National Book Award this year that David Ferry won for his wonderful book, Bewilderment. But Susan Wheeler's book is called Meme, and the first half, or big section, are all these poems that I'm sure they're just things her mother said. Her mother, all these kind of, little sayings, and it's like, I wish I had written down more about what my mom had said. Because I remember once she was in an ambulance and she said, "They don't put many cushions in those buffalo wagons." She was a real Westerner. And she also said it was really loud in there. But this is before I read the Susan Wheeler book. My mom, an atheist, would say, "Bless his heart," when she saw someone pushing along the street with their knuckles, their torso planted on a wheeled pallet. Or an old woman making her way to the bus with the help of a walker. Or a child, dirty and disheveled as if no one cared, but still bopping to some internal tune at the intersection we were driving by. We'd pass an old man sitting alone on a bench, trying to look dignified, as if waiting were his job. "Bless his heart," she'd say, and then the light would change and she'd keep driving, and I'd wonder what was in her heart and who would bless it. And this sort of, what's the word? I love that we get these debris cans with our trash pickup, and that you sort of have to fill it with the crud from your yard. I just consider it like an obligation to fill it every time, and it's just so great, all times a year. And I really feel bad if I don't get it full. There's so much crud in my yard. So this is kind of a riff on that. It's called Can. I was going to fill your debris can, pack in weeds and dropped limbs from your yard. The idea flooded me, but I resisted, knowing you would despond. I I was going to iron on the colored patches that symbolize your accomplishments. From my basement, I could do it if someone brought the tools. Matching your socks would be my pleasure, echoing as it did what was done for me, when I didn't appreciate the strange beauty of usefulness, when my mattress and all the rest could comfort me, but seldom did, when I had questions and the rooster was manufacturing a sense of striving I could not put down. In those days I was ninth in line, refusing the blanket stitch as if later would be a better time to rescue the frayed edge, as if my own ancestors had taught me nothing by their losses. But these things I could put in your debris can, stepping on the larger branches to break them up, dismantling them, deliriously taking them to the curb.